Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Samih Odhaib. I'm adult endocrinologist from Iraq, from the Specialized Diabetes Endocrine Metabolism Center. My presentation today is about, can people with diabetes fast Ramadan or fast safely during Ramadan? I have nothing to declare regarding this presentation. First of all, the fasting during Ramadan by itself is a challenge for many patients with diabetes. And fasting Ramadan in high-risk individuals with diabetic foot ulcers is challenging. That's why we tried to have a hook eye view on the challenges in a large cohort of individuals with type 2 diabetes and diabetes foot ulcers of different severities who tried to fast during Ramadan. Our research method depends on in-person survey during direct clinical interviews in many countries, in many Islamic countries, during year 2022, using a predetermined survey monkey. We encountered 1,305 individuals with type 2 diabetes and diabetes foot ulcers. Our results was distributed from many countries, but 70% of our cohorts is from data from Iraq, from different centers in Iraq and other countries like Indonesia, Egypt, Algeria, Malaysia, Pakistan, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Bangladesh, and other countries. Regarding gender distribution, the main cohort, about 59% of our cohort were men. For age distribution, the individuals less than 65-year-old constituted about 70% of the cohort, with a mean age of 58 plus minus 12 years. For type 2 diabetes, as is expected, 94% of our cohort is from type 2 diabetes patients, while only 6% were from type 1 diabetes patients. The mean duration for diabetes in our cohort was somewhat long. It was 14 plus minus 8 years, and it is not normally distributed. As you can see, it's skewed. The hemoglobin A1C distribution mainly show that our cohort suffer from high hemoglobin A1C. Mainly, about half of our cohort had a hemoglobin A1C in uncontrolled range, more than 9%, and with a mean hemoglobin A1C about 10 plus minus 6. The mean LDL low density lipoprotein cholesterol was 96 plus minus 34. And this graph or this figure show the distribution of level of patients with LDL, with diabetic foot ulcers. The comorbidities in our cohort range from hypertension, hyperlipidemia, retinopathy, neuropathy, microalbuminuria, nephropathy or CKD, and macrovascular disease, with hyperlipidemia constitute about 60% or 61% of in our cohort. The main question for our patients was, did you try to fast Ramadan this year? Yes, I tried in about 88% of patients. And for those, 91% of our cohort, 91 patients from our cohort fasted extra days after Ramadan. How many days did you manage to fast this Ramadan? Mainly, about 70% of the cohort tried to fast more than 22 to 30 days in Ramadan, and other distributed in 1 to 7, 8 to 14, and different ranges of fasting. The challenges in our cohorts were so many, and we group it as hypoglycemia. And the question was, did you had any time hypoglycemia during Ramadan? No hypoglycemia was encountered in about 74%, while 296 patients develop hypoglycemia. For those 296, we have hypos during fasting and break their fast in about 90% of the patients of those who develop hypoglycemia. I mean, hypoglycemia that needed emergency room management was encountered in 40 patients only, and this constitutes only 14% of those who had hypos. Timings of hypo mainly was between 9 a.m. Between 12 p.m. and 3 p.m., and then between 3 p.m. and before the Maghrib time or Maghrib or Futur. Response action to hypos in those with hypo was different either from omission of the medication or reduction of the medication doses or increasing the testing. But the astonishing thing that 22% of our patients did nothing to manage their hypoglycemia, and they describe no reason for that. Another challenge was encountered, and it was hyperglycemia, which was encountered in more patients than hyperglycemia. Did you had any hypers during Ramadan? This was 50-50 between yes and no. Timing of hyperglycemia in 537 individuals was mainly during eating and also during fasting hours. This means that it was different whether he or she was fasting or not fasting. This brings a dilemma to our discussion. Out of those 537 individuals who had hypers during fasting, there was 68% of our cohort break their fast and 2% needed emergency room admission. Response action in hypers differ from cutting their foods, increasing the dose of medication, increasing the frequency of their medication, urgent appointment in the diabetes clinic. But the astonishing thing that about 116 patients did nothing to manage their hyperglycemia. Another challenge, did you use SMBG during Ramadan? SMBG during Ramadan is very vital for increasing the compliance for drugs, compliance for fasting. The SMBG plan in Ramadan for 1,200 individuals was mainly yes at the same frequency before Ramadan. They didn't increase or decrease their frequency of testing in about 80% of our cohort. SMBG schedule was mainly 2 to 4 times weekly or 3 to times daily, which is different between individual to another, while others did not, or did not measure, or once weekly measurement. Diabetes education for fasting is a very vital, but as we will see that doctors was main source of education for those who fast. 81% receive their education about fasting from doctors. We need more and more contribution of others. Method of education were in person in a clinic during routine clinical consultation in about 93% of our cohort. Regarding diabetes therapy for those who fast, 81% were on metformin. You can see that the percentages are not 100%, but these are combinations: metformin with SUs, metformin with DPP4s, with TZDs and SGLT2 with different combinations. Insulin therapy for our cohort mainly were in the long-acting and the rapid-acting, and this was also combination. Our study did not end, but there was statistical analysis to find more and more correlations in this cohort were in the way, and the best is yet to come. In conclusion, a considerable percentage of our cohort had either hypo or hyperglycemia of different severities, although small percentage needed ER referral. Diabetes education are done mainly by doctors. Further participation is needed by other healthcare professionals. Many patients were reluctant to change their schedule of SMBG or their dosing. Fasting Ramadan ultimately should be individualized in those patients. That's the end of my talk. Thank you very much. I'm ready for any question. Thank you very much.